Hey there, this is Heath, and this video is a demonstration for the Slack summary app that I have built. So what this app does is that based on the user preferences, it would summarize all the chats in a particular channel, and it would give it to the as a summary to the user based on their preferences. Currently, the scope is very limited. I've added all the scope details in the description, so you can check it out from there. And now we can try and demonstrate the application over here. So we can subscribe or unsubscribe to a channel. We can have the summary as detailed or brief. And currently the frequency is only daily. Later on for the future versions we can have start having weekly and frequency as well. And lastly we can have the time that we want. So it's 1 p.m. so it's going to be 13 hours. And now I can subscribe to this particular channel, and as you can see we have got a reply that it has been subscribed. And if I were to try to subscribe once again for the detailed summary, it should not work because we already have for the same free summary type, right? But if we were to subscribe for some other summary type, that is let's say brief summary type, then it is going to work. So now for the random channel we have two types of summary subscribed, one is detailed and one is brief. Similarly, let's try with general channel as well. So here we'll have it detailed and daily summary, and now it's subscribed. So now we should be able to see the messages in the bold channel. So we have already gotten for random channel, and we should be able to see the summary for general channel right now, as you can see uh, in real time. So the summary message is very simple. I'm just using OpenAI API and I'm giving it the prompt. The prompt is also not really optimized. It is very basic version of prompt. So of course it's not really the best. We can optimize it later on. But the main u- reason for building this app was just to showcase and prototype what is really possible with these kind of applications. So once we have these summaries, we can also unsubscribe to it. So summaries, unsubscribe. Currently, if we do not really have unsubscribe for per summary, so if we were to unsubscribe in this version of the application, it will unsubscribe for all types of summary. So general had one summary and random channel had two types of summary, detailed and brief. If you were to unsubscribe, it would unsubscribe for all the channels. And that's it for this part. Of course, now we should not really see any more messages over here because we have already gotten messages. So it also keeps a record of the messages that was last sent. So we don't really have duplicates message sent once again and again. That was it for the demonstration part. All the details are there in the description for the scope, so you can check it out. Moving on to the technical aspect and technical specifications, I'll be covering it right now, starting in just a minute. So this is the GitHub repository for this summary application. You can check it out. I'll be sharing this link as well. I have mentioned everything that is needed: the system architecture, database schema, and scope, future scope, setup, contribution guidelines. Starting with the database schema for this application, we have organization. So per Slack workspace, user, the user who is creating summaries, we'll have summary and we'll have logs. So currently for the first version of Iswell, we have added a global summary type. So let's say a user were to subscribe for let's say 13 hours and later they change and subscribe to some other summary at 14 hours. So in that case, we are we'll overwrite it because summary time should be global for the first version. Of course, we can have it later on in the next version of the application. So just to showcase you this in real time, I'll delete the organization as well as the users. Oops, sorry. Yeah. So now it's all clean and everything is gone. So if we were to create a summary at whatever time that we are wanting it, so it should. Oops, sorry. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, so it also validates and gives you errors that what kind of uh, let's say if you do not have add any valid value, right? So now, since you have created a summary, organization should be created. Slack ID is, this is the Slack workspace ID. Similarly, the user, that is, this is me who created the summary, and I'm also showing the time zone. So everything in terms of logs and summary will be stored in UTC, but we also need to ensure that we send the messages or summary to the user based on their time zone, the time zone that they live in. So that is it for this part. And similarly, if I were to create another summary with brief, and let's say the time is 12, so in this case, as I had mentioned, it should overwrite it in the summary time. If we were to refresh it, now it's 12 since the summary time is global. And as you can see, we have same channel, we have two different types of summary, brief and detailed. Now if we were to create another summary, it should not work because we only have two types of summary, so it has already surpassed everything that has been done. And if I were to create for some other channel, this should work, and I should see a new row for the summary. That's it. That's here. So this is random channel. This is the general channel ID, and that is how all the tables and logs stuff we have. And as and when a new summary is generated, we store it in logs, so that just in case that we do not repeat and send the message, because we are running a cron job. So last timestamp and all is going to be checked before generating summaries, and yeah, and then it will create a summary accordingly. And if I were to unsubscribe from general channel, oops, unsubscribe, sorry, unsubscribe from the general channel. So now we should see that one summary is gone away because from the general channel. Similarly, we can do it for random channel as well. And as I had mentioned earlier that, sorry, as I had mentioned earlier that it's unsubscribed for all types of summary. So both the summaries would be unsubscribed and it would be deleted and gone. Currently, we are also deleting logs as well, but later on in the future versions, we can have it in such a way that once the summary is deleted, at least the logs stay. So maybe you can add something like status over here, that summary status now it is turned into inactive or something else, so that we at least have the records of the logs. That it's, in a way, we will call it soft delete, not hard delete. Moving on to the architecture and the ideal architecture. So currently how does it's working is that we are using WebSockets. That means the server is connected via Slack servers directly via WebSockets. The disadvantage of this is that we cannot horizontally scale it, right? Because if we were to horizontally scale it, then since we have direct connection with Slack servers, if we have three servers running, three instances of servers running, there will be three connections. So we'll get summary three times. This is similar to this problem of cron jobs with horizontal scaling. So let's say we have multiple server instances scale horizontally, and we are running cron inside each of the server. So what would happen is that cron would run for all three of these servers, and then we'll get three times output. But what we ideally want is to run it only once. So one good solution is having a serverless cron via an API. So because we'll have this cron job which calls an API, and because of load balance only one of these servers would get hit, and only one of the server would send run the cron job. So this is how ideally we would want to have it. That is, we would want to use via webhook instead of WebSockets. So that is for the later version of scope. So that is how we'll go in live production application. And similarly, currently we are running cron job inside of the server. So even in that case, we would run it outside of server. That is using serverless cron. And yeah, this is flowchart is very simple. Check if we have already not triggered, or it can be triggered or not based on the times and parameters. Then we'll fetch all the messages as needed, summarize with AI, OpenAI API. As I mentioned, I have not really optimized for prompt in this version, so it can be optimized later on. then it will send summary to the user, it would save logs in the database, and that's it for the application part. We are using a Postgres database with Prisma as I already shown, and later on as well we would want something like cache. So this is how the architecture would be once we go live in the production ready application. Of course we'll have stuff like firewalls, have everything inside of VPC for security and all the other stuff, maybe replicas of multiple instances. Same goes for database as well. So that's it for the architecture part. I added this as well inside of the readme file. And moving on to some other stuff, that is setup guidelines and contribution guidelines have also been added. So this is how you generally have it in a production environment or production ready application. I try to ensure that we adopt as many principles from the open source as we can. So simple, how do you have everything set up along with everything that is required, and similarly for contribution guidelines as well, how do you do it, how do you merge it, conventional commits for following conventions. This is a regular or industry way of following in open source projects. So they have this form of conventions that we follow for commit, and similarly for code organization as well. We are following Node best practices, which is a very widely used resource in the industry, and it covers a lot of things like project architecture, error handling, code style, and stuff like that. So, so if we were to check our package.json, we have two scripts, one for development, one for production. So in production, we'll be using PM2, of course, because we want it to be more robust in nature rather than just running on npm. And I believe that is it for this application. And the only thing which is pending is test cases. So I haven't really added test cases for this part. The reason being is that we have already we are using currently Slack Bolt JS, Slack Bolt, yes, library, and it doesn't really have a specifically testing support for this. So that is the reason I couldn't really add it. So as you can see, it's very direct inside of their Bolt JS as well. They don't really have an official way of testing it. So this is the reason test cases was kept in this application. But of course, in a production application, we would have test cases. That is it for this application. I have this link open. It's public, so feel free to contribute, or if you can improve it or see any other issues and stuff like that, please do let me know. I've added all the config files as well for this along with the environment variables, so you should be able to try it out yourself if you want to try it out. Thank you.